And recording. It's time for Clubhouse Chatter. Here's Norm Ordez.
That's right. Good morning on a rainy late June. And you know, it's not cold. My first guest this morning, though, he's probably where there's some warm rain. And he is in Hawaii, actually. He is back home for a visit. And my first guest is Frank Baumholtz of MVP Performance. Frank, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, thanks, Norm.
All right. So what is the weather like there?
Actually, it's been a terrible 83 with a little breeze, evening showers, so no complaints here.
So nothing unusual.
Yeah, that's probably the typical around here.
So I'm a little bit frustrated, Frank. I'm frustrated with Tim Lincecum throwing a no-hitter last night. And I'm not necessarily frustrated with the no-hitter itself, but you know, people are talking about, well, it should have an asterisk because it was the Padres and they're really not a major league lineup. You know, I want to go out and say that the Padres won the series. They beat the Giants 6-0 and 7-2 in the two previous games. And my deal is this, it's a major league lineup. And regardless of what team you are, that's the best of what you got in your system. And, Frank, you're a baseball guy. What's your take?
Well, I'd probably agree with you. You know, I think baseball's such a great game. On any given day, Tim goes out and throws a no-hitter. And on another day, the Padres beat the Giants. So that's one of the beautiful things about baseball is that, each team's going to put their best guys out there. And last night, it was Tim's night.
It was. Were you able to watch any of it?
I only saw the highlights later. The time difference seems to get you.
Right. It was pretty interesting. You know, he wasn't. He was a walk away from a perfect game, and man, you know, he stepped up when the Giants needed him most. The Giants haven't been playing well. And, the Padres, they've got a lot of motion riding now because of the death of Tony Gwynn and Jerry Coleman. And, like I said, I don't care, what people say. It's a major league lineup. And, there's a reason why those guys are in the Padres lineup because they are the best in that organization. So today, we brought Frank on. Frank is the head man at MVP Performance and trainer, former coach over at Newburgh High School, and a baseball guy through and through. We brought him on to talk about the increase in Tommy John surgeries this year, injuries, and why that is. And so let's start with, why do you think it's going on?
Well, I guess first and foremost, there's been a lot of talk about the increase in incidence of Tommy John. There's been countless articles. One I was just reading the other night was particularly going down into the youth systems. There was a doctor that had done 2 Tommy John surgeries on 2 boys that played in the Little League World Series, and they both were under the age of 14.
Wow.
In my mind, probably the number one thing in the instance of it is just overuse over time. And a lot of the young kids, they throw so many innings, and by the time they get to the professional level, they just wear out. And I think there's still more studies that need to be done on digging in deeper why that's the case. But I think one of the things is that every arm has so many pitches in it. your arm might have 10,000, my arm might have 8,000, and then all of a sudden, the one day, arm goes out, the weakest link is going to break. So I think the number one thing is probably just overuse. The kids, they're throwing so much at such a young age that by the time these guys get to where they're at with these big, huge physical bodies, the arm, one of the just biomechanical things is the arm will internally rotate at like 8,000 degrees or more per second. And there's so much torque on that shoulder and elbow when that thing is decelerating that over time it's just going to wear out. And I think one of the things we need to look more at is what's going on at the younger ages.
Right. So now there's been some talk of maybe the mound is an issue. Do you think that plays into the deal?
The elevation of the mound,
yes.
You think? No, I was reading a thing about that the other day, and I think it's kind of one of those inconclusive things, or that's just what the study was saying, that I'm trying to think back of exactly what the article was talking about, but I think there's so many different body types,
right,
that made it difficult for them to in that article talk about that would be a determining factor. Dr. Andrews was talking about, he had listed out a bunch of bullet points of things that were potential causes. You know, does the curveball too early have too much torque on the elbow? Does the elevation of the mound have significant impact on? And to be honest, all the different talks and studies that guys are doing, almost every single one of them leads back to the number of throws that a young man throws throughout his lifetime.
Right.
I think one of the biggest analogies that one of the doctors used, and I don't remember off the top of my head who it was. It was definitely in one of the Tommy John articles. Was like if you gave a 10-year-old a pack of cigarettes and he smoked for his lifetime, the chances of him having some health complications would probably be elevated. It's the same thing. If a kid throws and throws and throws and throws over his whole lifetime, the chances of something happening are so much higher than, maybe a position player that doesn't. So a lot of the things keep leading back to why that is such a high incident rate. The other thing that comes up, we'll probably talk about in a little bit, is just what are the young men doing to prevent, because we're all ball players, we're going to throw. Mm-hmm. That's part of our game, especially if we're a pitcher and even a catcher. So different things that we can do to prevent those things from happening.
So you talk about overuse, and you and I've had a few discussions down at Joe Dancer Park, and it's crazy. You get all fired up about this, but overuse. With today, you've got it's a year-round sport, baseball, softball, whatever, pretty much everything now. And the fall ball, and these kids, they don't shut down their arms, so they'll pitch a high school season, they'll go into their summer season, and then on top of that, they got the fall ball, and then they shut down for maybe a month and a half around Christmas break, but then they're right back at it mid-January, getting ready for their high school baseball season. You think fall ball should be done away with?
Well, I think there should. I don't think it should totally be done away with, but I definitely think kids should do other things. We have an opportunity at MVP to work with Joe Patterson when he's back in the off season, and he he totally shuts down after he gets back from pro ball.
Right.
And, probably, he's back, he's off, definitely December, November, October. There's probably 3+ months where he shuts down, and then he starts to kind of pick back up right after, right about Christmas time, and start throwing again, and then progressing in so he's ready to go when he heads back to spring training. Just because the body needs time to recover. I think there's way too many kids that are specializing way too early. And one of the big things is parents get caught up in this thing that my son or even daughter need to play more to improve at their sport so that they can get a college scholarship and it's part of that is just they've bought into a lot of these recruiting tactics by these companies that kind of give them a false direction. The kids they have to run, jump, climb, swing, roll, do all different kinds of things, play as many different sports. I posted an article that was written by Evan Longoria, and he was just talking about don't forget about what the goal is. These young kids, and he had an opportunity. He's having an opportunity to play at the highest level, and he's not a bad ball player. And he played multiple sports. They didn't play 100 baseball games a season, and then back-to-back seasons. So we've got to just remember what the goal is for our young men and women as they're growing up and developing.
Well, I remember growing up, and and it's probably the same for you, but man, we didn't play baseball year-round. In fact, I grew up in Kimberly, Idaho, and we didn't even have high school baseball. And so we were forced to go to these different towns to play American Legion baseball, and there wasn't very many of us. And, not only were we were football players, we were year 3, and a couple of them were 4-sport athletes growing up in high school, and that was commonplace. So it was commonplace for us to play basketball, do track in the spring, and football. We didn't have, year-round football training back then. We did our 2-a-days, for a couple of weeks. But it was totally different back then. And now, I don't ever recall. I remember hearing a few of the Tommy John surgeries, especially in the major leagues, but nothing like what it is now. And it's beyond pitchers now. So I know Mac Williamson, former Salem Kaiser Volcano in the Giants organization, he's an outfielder. And he's had it. And there's been a couple of outfielders that I've heard of it happening to this year. And so, there's definitely something to the overuse. So let's get into, you chatted a little bit about prevention. Let's get into care and prevention a little bit. So what do you believe?
Well, I think one of the things, going back to just as a coach's philosophy, there's so many of our kids that, the outfielders that you mentioned, they'd be interested to know, in their younger years, did they play other positions? It's not uncommon to see a kid, catching, 5 innings behind the plate, and then all of a sudden he's pitching the last 2 innings.
Right.
Or he throws 4 innings in the game, and then he's playing shortstop the last, few innings of the game, or vice versa. And so if you're looking at just cumulative effect of how we use our players, to be, cognizant of, if a guy goes out and throws, 80 pitches, and then you're going to have him go behind the plate or in another position where, he's got, 10, 20, 30 more throws, all of that every single game. Those are the things that coaches can look at. And there was even an article about a kid throwing, it was some ridiculous pitch count, a young kid, and great, they won the game, they won some big tournament, things like that, but at what cost?
Yeah, that was up in Washington. Some kid threw like 190 pitches.
Yeah, it was just like mind-boggling. So I think, go ahead.
So is there like, so pitch counts. I mean, I know it depends on age, and I know within the McMinnville Parks and Recreation, we limit our kids to pitch counts. And as you get older, that pitch count goes up. I think we cap out at like 70 for a game.
Right.
But even then, at like our middle school level, some of those kids, I mean, they get 30, 40 pitches in an inning or two. And
right.
So is there a perfect science to it? I mean, is there a perfect pitch count?
Well, I think just like anything, with the concussion things that have been coming, there's so much more on coaches' education that we've been going through over the recent years. I just think there needs to be more of that. And the same thing with, the pitching and things, just in my own experiences, is that, when you get to the higher levels, the guys are going to play to win. You put your best players out on the field.
Absolutely.
But at our younger levels, there should be you should have a good pitching staff that you can use multiple players, that you're not just riding one pony, the whole way home. And then, just because you're winning ball games, that goes back to the Longoria article about just don't forget about what the goal is,
right?
About the young men. So on that, I don't know if there's a perfect science to, the pitch count, but I think that, looking at it kind of as a whole with all the kids, especially at the youth levels, to continue, because they do need to develop their skills. But, they can develop their skills in a lot of different ways. There was a great article a while back. It was talking about recruiting with some of the different collegiate coaches. It was back when Carroll was at USC, and they were talking to the Syracuse lacrosse coach, and he had one of the top defensive lacrosse players coming. And he was talking about the early specialization. He was asking the kids, how do you work on your defensive skills when you're not in lacrosse season? The kid said, I'm in the weight room and this and that. And he's like, no, how do you work on your defensive skills? You could play soccer. You could play other sports that are similar to what we do on the lacrosse field. And he liked having recruits that came that played other sports because he knew their bodies weren't going to break down because they did one thing over and over again, and it's just what they see. And they look at all that stuff, especially as they get older and they start investing money into, players to come and play for their organization or university, or even if they go to play at the professional ranks. So, going there and then trickling back into the youth of what we're doing, to encouraging them and parents to say, your kid doesn't have to play all year round. He can still get better skill-wise by playing other things, and he's going to be healthy, or she's going to be healthy in the long run because they're more well-rounded. And then that kind of also leads into the strength and conditioning thing. There's so many things that we've done in our society that are way different than when we were kids, because we were out playing and running and doing, playing football, basketball, baseball, soccer, all different kinds of activities. Now the kids are so, technology has changed the way we've done things. Kids sit more, people sit more. We've created all these either lack of use or overuse patterns that in the strength and conditioning world, we're spending our time trying to fix those things so that when we do strength train, that we're not compounding things. One of the big things that we talk about at MVP is that you can't put function on top of dysfunction. And what I mean by that is we see all the time where a guy has a limited mobility pattern, and then he goes out, and let's just say, because we're talking about pitching, so a guy has a hip mobility problem, and he can't get into rotation when he's throwing. All of a sudden, he's got this crazy torque that now compounds all of the things that he's done right into that, either the elbow or the shoulder, and it just increases things. So we can look at so many more things about what a kid is doing just by looking at how he moves, and then looking at the strength and conditioning program that a young man has or doesn't have. So
interesting. So prevention. So how do we, are there certain, using the bands and stuff? Are you a proponent of using the bands? And what do you do? Let's talk about, we're talking about Joe Patterson. Let's talk a little bit about Joe Patterson. I mean, can you say what Joe does during the off season?
I'll give you an overview of what we're doing, absolutely. And then this goes for anybody that comes and trains with us or any of the programs that that we work with, is that we use the functional movement screen to look at how a young man or woman moves, or any of our clients for that matter. And we're looking for any, it just gives us a snapshot of how they move. The functional movement screen is very well used in a lot of professional sports, Major League Baseball, the NFL. There's 7 different patterns that we're looking at. And if there is any type of asymmetrical, movement impairment, dysfunction, obviously we're looking for pain as well. If any of those things come up, we're going to address those things before we impart any exercise on top of that. It goes back to the saying, don't put function on top of dysfunction. Mm-hmm. So if there's some type of movement impairment, let's say for a baseball player, one of the common things is that because we're one-sided, we just throw with one side. We usually have some asymmetrical mobility problems. Sometimes let's say our dominant shoulder is a little more mobile, but internal rotation we're lacking. So that's a whole nother topic of GERD. We call it glenohumeral internal rotation, and it's a deficit. The thing that we're going to look at is trying to improve the range of motion within that shoulder, and then also maybe minimizing some of the exercises. A lot of the young kids that I see, I get their high school programs, and I'll look, and they do the typical bench press, push press. A lot of anterior work that is a little problematic. It just contributing to the overuse of what we do as a ball player. But so Joe's kind of deal, when he gets back from pro ball, we'll screen him. We'll go through. We'll look at any of the things that we need to address. The Diamondbacks are amazingly proactive and advanced in the strength and conditioning world. So a lot of the things that we're doing are just kind of working off of what the Diamondbacks are doing while he's there. And it's a great just kind of flow into what he does. And then, he does a lot of typical strength work. A lot of the things that we do with all of our baseball guys is we do a lot of lower half work and then a lot of posterior chain work. So a lot of, rowing and for rotator cuff exercises, we impart a lot of carrying and isometric work through the rotator cuff, so that we can offset a lot of the rotational work that guys do through the season.
Nice. Frank, I love talking baseball with you. And, whether it be down at Joe Dancer Park or on the phone or wherever we run into each other, definitely appreciate you coming on this morning. And you know what? You're on vacation. So, man, get on to vacationing. We're going to miss you. We're going to miss you at Dante's Inferno this year, though.
Yeah, it was one deal. I know the schedule. They had with the construction and things, so they had to bump the camp up, and I'm definitely gonna miss the camp as well. But I know that all the kids will have a great time, and I love chatting with you as well, Norm. So I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, not a problem. We'll have to catch up when you get back into town. So once again, Frank, thank you very much, and hey, enjoy your vacation.
Hey, thanks, Norm. I appreciate it.
All right, bye. So there you go, Frank Baumholtz with MVP Performance. And, man, Brian, what do you think?
He's got a lot of good things to say,
I love putting you on the spot.
Well, I'm pushing every button in the world. I'm trying to control my dog as well. Yes. It's really hard to do that. I look back to my childhood and what I used to do, baseball, basketball, football. And
played it all.
Exactly. But I kind of thought in there, though, is it really that big of a deal? The Tommy John thing, I understand, but how many people get to that elite level? How many people are having that Tommy John that are in high school still, or college that, they're not making the millions of dollars?
Actually, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. And, I probably can go, you could probably talk to Scott Brocious over at Linfield.
Uh-huh.
And I would imagine there's probably 3-4 guys on his pitching roster that's had it. which is really a high number.
And that's D3 baseball, and that is huge.
And so, so it's very prevalent.
Think about the people who haven't had the surgery that probably don't even know they should have it.
Exactly.
And you're probably looking at one right here.
Yes.
I mean, seriously. Yeah. I mean, my arm to throw overhand, it kills me.
Yes.
And I still play softball, and I'm playing underhand. And will we ever see an underhand pitcher in maybe even high school, college, pro baseball?
Interesting.
My dad used to play underhand softball, fast pitch in the military, and I'll tell you, in high school, he would throw to me a lot harder than I could throw to him overhand. I'm just curious. Somebody may have tried that. I don't know.
In the fast pitch world, the pitching. I think the pitching mound the pitching rubber is at like 43 feet.
Right.
And so when you're on a hill at 60 feet away. It's a little bit different. I honestly don't see it happening. Now, if there was no mound, maybe.
Would that save people's arms? I mean, that's a natural.
I don't know. That might be.
Do you see any softball players that have that? I mean, I just don't know.
That might be a future conversation with somebody else. So I'm Norm. That was Brian, and this was Clubhouse Chatter, and we will be back for another show. Oh, yes, I'd like to thank our sponsors. We have MDM Designs, Mark Canham, who does our shirts and whatnot, does a great job. His son Mitch, Base by Pros, check him out, basebypros.com. Baseball Dudes, Chris Gazelle with Baseball Dudes there. I've also got a new little band, 9-inning know-it-all. I am a part of the 9-inning know-it-all empire. And Baseballisms, check them out, baseballisms.com. Use the code Clubhouse Chatter when you're purchasing and save 15% off. I get my hair cut at Baker Street Barbershop with Carlos and the boys. And actually, it's Proper Cuts Barbershop. Carlos, I'm sorry. Go down, save Carlos some money. It'll save you a couple bucks. I'm Norm. That's Brian. We are